Support the Dungeon Masters Dojo by heading over to Apple Podcasts and Podchaser and leave a review. Take the time to leave a comment as well. This helps make us more searchable to those listeners interested in content such as ours. But more importantly, we want to know how we are doing and what topics you would like to hear about.
Another way you can support the DMD is by buying the DMD a beer, so we can continue to deliver quality content to you, our listeners. This also helps us upgrade and replace equipment. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/the-DMD and buy us a beer, or 3, or 5. Don't forget to say something nice or mean. We don't care. You're buying us a beer. Now on to this week's episode.
Welcome back, students of the Dojo. This week, we're continuing our look at Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
And today, we're looking at the offerings of the brand new Feats.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your dungeon masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robotile. Let's enter the dojo and see what they have in store for us today. Hey, Scott. Hey, Bill.
What's that funny smell?
Well, this is the first of our series on fetishes. We're talking about feats.
Yeah, just Lou. What are you getting us into?
I don't think this is you.
I think you got the wrong script.
Well, thank goodness.
Oh, EATS. Oh, yeah. Just glasses.
Well,
glasses.
I wore this vinyl outfit for nothing.
Oh, God.
It's a good thing I unzipped the mask first. And on that note, back at Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. But before we get into all of this good, clean fun, listeners, shout out to Tammy, who bought us a lot of beer. Yes. We thank you. Our livers don't. And
My liver thanks her.
I don't have one.
Yeah. Mine's still processing all that beer. And, of course, Dan was kind enough to reach out to us and say all sorts of flattering things.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
And in corresponding with Dan's given us some ideas for some episodes as a new DM. So look forward to the Dan episodes and some DM advice that hopefully we can help elevate his game. So thank you guys very, very much. Thanks for the beer, and thank you for the kind words. And drive safe, Dan.
I think it's awesome that a girl bought me a beer.
Yeah, I do too. I think was the last one to do that was, Betsy Ross?
No, is Betty White.
Betty White.
Yeah.
A little older than Betsy Ross.
It was her Sweet 16. All right, let's move on.
Yes, I love you, Betty White.
Let's get
We're talking feats. Tasha's brings us a couple pages of feats to add to our game. So that's all right. I don't know how I feel about some of them, but
There's a couple I like in here.
There's some that are really good. There's some that I'm like, they're not. There's some that, to be honest with you, they're not blowing my skirt up.
Lou always finds a couple that he likes.
Yes.
I always find a couple I don't.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of some of them.
Yeah, there's some here that are okay. There are others that personally I like just because for personal reasons. And there's other I look at and go, why?
Yeah, the one for me is Chef.
On the plus or the negative?
On the negative. I think of the South Park character every time I read that. Hello, children. Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of all the recipes you can collect in World of Warcraft to buff yourself, before you go on a raid or whatever have you. and I don't know, a little too MMO video gamey for my tastes.
Now, see, I don't do MMOs at all. I like the chef just for personal reasons because I like to cook. I've actually been told I'm good at it by all the guys on our week long. I could be that they're just locked up in the house and have nothing else to eat besides the stuff I prepare for them. But I'm oftenly told that they like what I give them. So I kind of like this one. I like, the idea that you can get an extra D8 out of it for healing after you take eat the food and take a short rest. So it's okay.
But to Scott's point, I think I can see, because this takes away from one of the cleric spells. I think it was a Bountiful Feast or something like that.
Yeah.
So it kind of has the same effect, but I can see this in both spins. I can see why Scott doesn't like it. It takes away from another class. At the same time, now that class doesn't have to worry about wasting or using a spell slot to give you sort of the same bonuses.
And by now, we should be used to everything they do taking away from somebody else.
Yep.
Because that's kind of pretty much all Tasha has done from up to this point, is taking abilities from other classes and giving them to somebody else. And
with a little tweak.
Yeah, it's part of the mass homogenation.
Frankly, I don't like it.
Can I cook something for you, make you feel a little better?
Yeah, you could.
A cheeseburger?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Too bad I'm a chef. You don't like it. Starve, bastard.
You don't have to be a chef to make a hamburger. I've been to McDonald's.
Yeah, that's not a hamburger.
So, chef, I don't really care for
it. If you got a combatant or something like that, it obviously it can seem like a wasted feat. I mean, I like it personally just because of my personal interests, but that's about it. As far as gameplay is concerned, I could see how this could easily take away from a bunch of things. Yeah, you get a little bit of healing for that meal after a short rest. That's about it. There's a few things in there that take care of you personally, but not really all that much. I think it comes up short compared to most of the others.
I think this one is really just set for role play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I don't care for it. I don't even like it a little bit. Not at all.
What about Crusher?
Crusher I love. Crusher and Fighting Initiate I really like. I think both of those would work well for a particular type of character. Like maybe like a thief. A rogue, someone who has no formal training in fighting but learned like on the streets.
I could see Crusher being that one, yeah.
Just how to fight dirty.
Yeah, I could see that. Or your big brute.
Or yeah.
Just your big brute.
Yeah, it'd be perfect for a barbarian, to just maul someone.
Give him Tavern Brawler and give him Crusher, and between those two, he's pretty much set for a hand-to-hand on anybody. If he gets high enough level, throw a grappler in there as well, and now you have someone that you don't want to go near him with a sword because he's just going to take it from you and just break you into pieces.
I think those would fit nicely in an urban campaign. I just see that being like a really cool thing to add to a barbarian. Now you're probably out there going, but Scott, barbarians don't belong in an urban campaign. And I would say, sir or madam, yes, they do. And here's the thing. You may be thinking barbarian as culture. I'm thinking of barbarian as the class. Now, you don't have to necessarily be a barbarian from a barbaric culture. You could just be someone who is a savage fighter, and you can have that perfectly well in an urban environment.
Sort of like a gladiator.
Almost, yeah. Or maybe, a bouncer or something like that. A dock
but I'm
worker.
just saying, like a gladiator is not a race. It's a It's a class.
Yeah.
So you're talking about barbarian in that fashion.
Absolutely, barbarian the class, not a cultural thing, and it would work just fine in an urban setting. I think it would work quite nicely.
Bodyguard for a higher up
Yep.
nobleman or something like that, someone who's always dressed fine, but under that wonderful lace and crushed velvet, these rippling muscles, and he's staring you down. Go ahead, take one step closer to his lordship. I dare you.
like that big meathead, wearing a bowler hat.
Yeah.
Or who's the Bond villain that had the bowler hat that he was taking like statues' heads off? What was it? Odd Job?
Odd Job, yes.
Yep. Someone like that, or like Jaws or whatever. So those two I like. I like Crusher and the Fighting Initiate.
Well, the Fighting Initiate's for the more refined fighter.
Do you have a couple of favorites, Bill?
Wow. It's not going to be telekinetic or telepathic if that's what you're trying to get to. Okay, I just saying right there. I'm with him. I like the Crusher and the Fighter Initiate just because they kind of diametrically opposed a little bit.
Okay.
One of them is just the rough and tumble in your face, where the Fighter Initiate comes right out and says your martial training has helped you develop a particular style of fighting. So it's for the more refined fighter, at least as I read it. So it gives you an option on both ends, depending on where you want to go with your character. I kind of like the Artificer Initiate. You get a cantrip. You can cast your this feat's first level spell without a spell slot, and you gain proficiency in one type of artisan tools. So it's a nice little well-rounded. There's nothing really big there, but if you play in a jack of all trades type character, which I love to play. I love to play the jack of all trades. It has a little bit of knowledge across the board. This one fits very, very well into that type build. And then I've always been a big, to Scott's points, very often the high fantasy in the game. You want to be a fantastic world. That's where like the Eldritch Adept or the Fey Touch come in. Anything to do with the Fey, I'm always enamored with. So either of those I seem to gravitate towards quite a bit.
Yeah, that Artificer feat I think would go well with Skill Expert.
Yes.
If you want to pick up and be a jack of all trades, I mean those feats
those two complement each other very, very well.
And I like the Shadow Touch too. Any of those the Feywild or the Shadowfell, I can understand getting that feat, especially if you happen to have spent, the first maybe 4 levels or even, 4 levels within one of those realms and, are now coming back out into whatever campaign setting that you started in, and having, these feats would make a lot of sense to me because it would change you in some small way. The magic that's there,
right,
would grant you some kind of boon or would alter you in some way, shape, or form. So for me, that makes a lot of sense, and I do kind of like those.
Lou,
I'm dying.
To
hear. I got a couple in my mind that I just want to see if Lou mentions those, those, so that I know how well I know Lou.
My guess is going with the telekinetic slasher.
Unfortunately, no. I'm going to start with the Gunner. Only because, like in our homebrew world, I'm one of the few that actually use boomsticks or firearms. And we kind of reskinned Crossbow Expert, and I think Gunner can actually remove Crossbow Expert from that, and I'll have the same benefits.
Yeah.
It makes more sense.
It does, especially for him. I increased my dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. I already have it, but this will actually, make it more official. I gain a proficiency with firearms. I ignore the loading property, which is the same as Crossbow Expert.
Yep.
And being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on my range attack rolls, which is the same. So now I can just unskin Crossbow Expert and use this.
That looks like what they did. They just took Crossbow Expert and just put a new name on it.
Yeah, exactly. And my other one that I really like is Eldritch Adept. For the reason being, yes, I play a Warlock. I'm playing a Warlock right now, but I'm a human Warlock. So to get that extra invocation at level 1, this is a good feat to take. This is it'll be a surprise to a lot of people, especially when you take something like Devil's Sight, which I know I really like because once you get that cast darkness, you can cast darkness on yourself,
Still be able to see,
be able to see. And I have advantage on my attack rolls now, and the enemy has disadvantage.
That's not bad at all.
No, plus I would like to flavor, like when I use my Devil's Sight, I would flare my eyes red. Just for thematics.
For an instant until it all went dark and you couldn't see anything.
Exactly. But, I can see up to 120 feet in distance. And with the dark vision, that's a pretty good improvement. Especially for a level 1 warlock who really doesn't have any invocations at the time.
Right.
And later when I get more, I can actually change it up if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time you give me a level.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I could see that. And like I said, I played a few warlocks myself and really do enjoy that particular class. So I could see that one coming along. Just like you said, it'd be very, very helpful, especially at the lower levels.
Especially if you're playing a human, you get that feat ability right off the beginning. So
that's nice.
That's one to take.
That human variant.
Yeah, and I usually do that. I play the human variant most of the time. And I just think makes you or puts you on par with some of the other classes because they do get a couple extra bonuses here and there.
And there's the gong, so it's time for a break.
Grab your elephant guns and your Hunter Orange because we're hitting the stars, nerds. It's space dinosaur season.
Head off on a space adventure every week with the Homebrew, a D&D play podcast. Sure, there's lots of actual play podcasts out there. Heck, you can throw a rock and hit a dozen of them. But are any of these D&D podcasts sci-fi campaigns? You can't shake a stick at them because there ain't many, if any. And that's what sets these veteran gamers and their podcast apart from the sea of actual play podcasts.
If you're new to D&D, old gamers like us, somewhere in the middle, or maybe you just like a good story. And who doesn't like a good story? Give the Homebrew, a D&D play podcast, a listen. You can find them on the web at thehomebrewpodcast.com or anywhere podcasts are found.
The links are in the description below.
There's the gong, and now we're back from break.
I want to thank Marlon Wayans for posing for the picture of the wizard. They pulled out all the stops here with this book. There's a lot of celebrities in this. I was actually going to suggest that it was telekinetic and telepathic that you might have fancied, and Poisoner.
Those are on the list, but they're a little further down.
I was actually surprised. I was way off, way off.
No one picked Meta Magic Adept.
That's not a bad one. The Meta Magic. I think with the feats that they have, you could cobble together a spellcaster from a class that's not intended to be a spellcaster. Yes. Which adds a nice flavor. Like if you wanted to be, okay, I'm going to be a monk, but I'm going to be one of those mystic type of monks that's able to use his, maybe it's your key that's allowing you to cast these, spells or whatever have you, or move these objects or whatnot, so it's something along those lines. It doesn't necessarily have to be the power of your mind or the power of the magic, but it could be your key, that inner flame, your chakra or your chi or whatever you want to call it.
Or just a dead relative that likes to move things around if you ask them to.
Yeah. So those I do like. Poisoner I think really works well with the assassin class.
Yes.
It makes sense to kind of pick up that feat.
Well, I mean, it gives you one big bonus right off the top is it allows you to poison your weapon as a bonus action instead of an action.
Yeah, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very nice. So you can give it a good dousing before you go into battle, really,
Yep.
and then it's off to the races.
Well, it's nice. It's also DC 14 when a lot of other things start at DC 12.
That's right. Yeah,
It's like on your con save. That 2 points is huge,
and it's 2d8 points poison damage on top.
Yeah. And if you
that's effective poison.
Yeah, add that to your sneak attack.
Mm-hmm.
And if you crit on top of that.
Yeah. So you can, it stacks like crazy. And it makes the
I can see the poisoner going to a bard.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Especially with courtly intrigue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Actually,
you put a bard in a court setting where he's whether he's a jester or whether he's just a confidant or someone that it is the lady's fancy at the time, and give him poisoner.
Well, this will work also for the warlock.
Yes,
and for the alchemist.
Yeah, yeah.
I think those two are like the bard,
yep.
the warlock, because he's usually a face person, and then your alchemist, who's already
it's already dabbling.
Yeah,
it does make a lot of sense.
Actually, if you went with your gnome,
Graven
artificer.
Oh yeah,
you go with the artificer who has one of the abilities they have is to make potions and stuff on one of the subclasses.
Yep.
Throw the poisoner in there along with it. That actually seems to be one of the most versatile so far. There's quite a few classes that could take advantage of that one.
Yeah, and I think the thing with feats is, they should fit with the overall theme of your character.
Yes,
and that's an important thing to consider when you're selecting your feats. Well, how does it fit?
Well, and that's why I said, like with Graven, my gunslinger, I would just use the gunner, and then for my warlock, because it kind of fits. Yes, people are saying, well, you're already a warlock, you're going to get the invocations, but I'd like to have that extra invocation so I don't have to use that invocation slot later. It kind of fits. At least in my mind, it's more thematic too.
Now, that would be with a party that works together, right?
With or without. It doesn't matter.
Well, hey, you don't have to use that spell slot. I got this ability, with tables that cooperate.
Yes. Yeah, it really helps that way.
Not that we'll ever see that, but
we usually cohese near the end
of the world.
That's where it counts, though.
It is nice to see a couple pages of new feats. I think that was something that was kind of lacking for the longest.
It is. But again, you got to remember these are in the optional book because some people might not like the telepathic or telekinetic. So you got to remember that all these are really optional. It's really unique. This is where, again, we're going to talk about it again. Session 0 is a good place to talk about picking up some of these because your DM Bill may not like somebody picking telekinetic or telepathic because that's not something. Our world really doesn't really evolve around that. Yes, there are spells. That's a little different.
Or you may have a DM that doesn't do feats at all.
Right.
Because those are optional to begin with.
Yep.
True.
So, yeah, you're right. That session 0, and we've said it a bunch of times, is really, really important so that everybody is on the same page. What do you think, Bill? Without getting too much into it, about the telekinetic and telepathic feats. I'm dying to hear this, and this is a prelude to when we have our discussion on psionics, and I bring my ringer in.
You just like poking the hornet's nest, don't you?
I have a long stick. I have that 10-foot pole, right?
I was about to say, you better use your 10-foot pole. Telekinetic is a glorified mage hand. You get mage hand, but you get the ability to shove somebody or pull somebody 5 feet. Obviously, DC 8 plus proficiency bonus and modifiers. But you can shove or pull someone within 30 feet of you. The mage hand isn't strong enough to do that by itself, but you get mage hand as part of it, and then you get this shove or pull option. That's not too bad, and you could also you're going to be able to move small things and along with that. That one. It's tolerable.
Well, really, is it? Because there's a lot of them have a limit use on what your proficiency bonus is.
Yeah.
This one really doesn't have that.
And if you already know mage hand, your range increases by 30 feet. So that's up to 60 feet.
So you could do the force shove like from Star Wars.
Yeah.
If you want to build a Jedi Knight, this is something to add to your.
Well, it's only 5 feet, but still, if they're 3 feet away, 3 feet away from the edge of a building, 5 feet's more than enough
or
to
a cliff,
or a cliff, or anything else,
bridge,
or the open flames of a campfire that Lou started in the middle of the dungeon. And
that's actually bonfire. And we will discuss that in another episode.
Telekinetic, I don't have too much of a problem with. Telepathic, not happy. Communication is one of those things that has to get worked out. And this one kind of is a real big shortcut. Especially when the party's split in combat or something like that, or if they're sneaking around, it makes it too easy to coordinate.
True.
I'm not going to say it can be abused, but I think it's too handy a shortcut, especially when you're trying to build the tension and, what's going on over here and what's going on over there. Your party is split by 40, 50, 60 feet. At 60 feet out, you can have a conversation with somebody without anyone else hearing it. And that lack of communication for your group being separated like that is very handy, especially when they can't let whoever's between them know that they're there. And this kind of takes that all completely away. It's way too easy to coordinate, I think. Now, there's spells that'll do the same thing, but they're pretty short-lived. Where this one here is, where's my time on it? I don't see a time on there.
No, there's not. So you can just communicate with somebody 60 feet away from you.
I mean, it doesn't give you... they have to know the same language, which helps. Your communication doesn't give the creature the ability to respond to you telepathically. So you can send messages. So, all right, so maybe you can't have a full conversation, but still, if you're the tactician and you have this, and you see someone 60 feet away and you start giving commands, your DM's going to have a real tough time, especially if you have a party that listens to your tactician. I know I am the tactician. I know I could wreck a table with this.
On the opposite side, too, the enemies could have this, too. So you remember, whatever the players can do, the enemies have.
True.
What I don't really care for is when the detect thoughts part. There's no spell components needed.
Yep.
Yes, you can only do it once before a long rest or, during a long rest.
But now that doesn't require any spell slots.
No.
Or components. So, wow. But you have to finish a long rest before you can cast this again, so that's kind of a one-shot on that particular one. But
I think it would make for a pretty cool character to have this. Say you have a character that is mute. They understand languages. Perhaps they understand more than one language, but they just cannot speak it. So this is a way to have like a mute character that can. That's actually pretty cool. And I think it would work in a situation like that. I think it would work very nicely, and it would add that a really nice theme to a character concept. But just to Bill's point, having that and just having it, it does. It takes away from the tension. It takes away from kind of the self-reliance piece when you send somebody out to scout.
All right, how about this? One of my favorite characters, Dog. Dog is quite literally a dog. He communicates through barks. I have a soundboard for him. If he had telepathic, how much would be taken away from Dog?
The thematics would be taken away, I think.
Yes. Trying to get the point across. Like I said, I have a soundboard for him. And the table has started to recognize the different barks and growls and stuff. So they hear a particular growl, like, whoop, here comes Sacred Flame.
Yep.
They're starting to recognize it. So the communication is built up through a sound, through the sound effects that I'm using. But that would be completely taken away with this spell. Or this feat, I mean. So,
yep.
It has its uses. I get it. And you're right. Like with a mute character in that particular state, that would be absolutely wonderful. It would probably could be used by a sentient animal that doesn't have the ability to communicate. But when you've built them up the way I have with Dog, I think this would take so much away from that character.
Well, yes and no, because I was just rereading on the telepathic ability, and you can speak telepathically to any creature, so it's only one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I can see if it was creatures, then that would be a bigger issue. But if it's just one-on-one, I can see that being tolerable.
I don't know. I'm not thrilled with it.
Bill's hating on the psionics.
Well, that's I was about to say. This is all a prelude to what's coming down the road.
Stay tuned for that one. Once that book comes out, boy, we're going to have to talk Bill off the ledge on that one.
You guys aren't going to get a word in edgewise. I'm going to get up on a soapbox that's so damn big. I'm going to have to go on the second floor of the Lyceum and yell from there.
Overall,
what are your thoughts? Overall, I like the selection. I think there's more useful here than unuseful.
Yes, there's only a couple, like I said, like the chef, and I'm really not too. Yeah, well, I do like telepathic and telekinetic. They're my least on the list. But again, these are all optional. We just have to keep that in mind. But overall, they're okay. Except for the two I mentioned. Those are great.
I like the majority of them. I just don't like the chef thing. It's too much MMO for me.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what I dislike about 4th edition.
And even then, like Gunners has to be world specific because a lot of worlds do not have firearms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our long game campaign that we've been playing for the last few years, I think I'm one of the only people that I've seen. If I haven't seen any NPCs with firearms or even any other PCs, I'm one of the very few. So it is very. This is a conversation you need to have with your DM to see if this will fit your world. Just because you have Gunner doesn't mean there are guns in the world.
Right.
Well, someone had to be the inventor of it.
Exactly. And they just happened to give it to the wild card.
That's good. You're just waiting for you to blow yourself up.
It almost happened a couple times.
It will happen eventually. Your dice are gonna pull a Scott on you, and you're like, no!
They will betray you.
And that's a look at Tasha's Cauldron and everything, and a quick look at the optional features. See you next week in the dojo. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.